Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another trade rumor video. First one in a while. We got a couple of things to talk about, including some interesting signings, a couple of injury updates, plus we got some trade rumors involving the New York teams, Pittsburgh, and the Canucks and the Ducks. And we'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. Would never be able to do without you guys. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below. Really does help with the channel. And we're on the road to 500 subscribers. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your guys' opinion on all that was discussed here today. So in today's video, we got a simple trade rumor video to get back into the swing of things. Haven't done a trade rumor video in probably a week and a half, close to 2 weeks now, so it's been a while. Haven't done one since after the trade deadline, but we are going to do one here today, talk about a couple of things. But as usual, we're going to start with a couple of signings. Since I've not done trade rumor videos, there's been quite a few signings, so I'm going to get to a couple of them here today. Hopefully touch on the rest of them, hopefully in the few future trade rumor videos. But I talked about all the signings that happened on trade deadline day. So after trade deadline day, we saw a couple of interesting signings. So we'll look at the 8 signings that happened right after the trade deadline. So first, we'll go to look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, as they gave 3 ELCs out to young players. First, they signed Chytil, who was a 4th round pick in last year's draft, number 111 overall, who's a right shot defenseman, to a 3-year ELC with a fee of $860,000. A decent 4th round pick from last year's draft. Looks like it could eventually be a really solid 3rd, maybe 2nd pair defenseman. So that could be a really good pickup there for the Penguins. They also give undrafted center prospect Avery Hayes a 2-year ELC with an AAV of $830,000 that we're going to start next year. So that could be a really good pickup there for the Penguins. Hayes looks like he eventually be maybe like a bomb 6'4" at some point, so that's another interesting sign there for the Penguins. And they signed 2021 7th round pick, 215th overall, Daniel Latch, who's a left shot defenseman, to a 2-year ELC with an AAV of $860,000. So very late 2021 7th round pick. They also gave an ELC to. So a lot of ELCs handed over the past handful of days by the Pittsburgh Penguins, as they signed Chytil, Latch, and Hayes all to ELC, so interesting note there. Then we saw 2 other ELCs we handed out. First, the Detroit Red Wings signed 2022 4th round pick Anton Johansson, who's a left shot defenseman, to a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $950,000. Johansson looks like a very solid prospect there for the Red Wings. I think eventually could be a solid 3rd, maybe 2nd pair guy for the Red Wings, so that could be a really good pickup there for Red Wings long term as they sign Anton Johansson. And then we saw the Dallas Stars sign 2023 6th round pick, who's a center prospect, Angus MacDonell, to a 3-year ELC with AAV of $850,000. MacDonell's been looking pretty good over in, I think it's juniors, so he's looking pretty good. The Stars obviously saw enough to sign him to his ELC just a year after he was drafted, so really good stuff there for MacDonell. I think eventually MacDonell could be a solid bomb 6'4", just sort of like Avery Hayes with Pittsburgh for Dallas. So I think this could be a really good pickup there for the Stars. So we saw 5 ELCs be handed over the past couple of days, as Angus MacDonell in Dallas, Anton Johansson in Detroit, and Latch, Chytil, and Hayes in Pittsburgh were all signed to ELC, so interesting note there. And then we saw 3 contract extensions also be signed over the past couple of days. First, we saw the LA Kings send one of their actually surprisingly good young players to a new extension, and that was Andre Lee. Lee, who had actually been a decent player there for the Kings in the AHL over the past couple of years. Just last year, he put up 8 goals and 13 points in 36 AHL games after he had 6 goals and 9 points in 58 AHL games the year prior, so looked pretty good. Actually earned himself a roster spots out of training camp, looked pretty good. It's been up and down this year, has 3 goals and 11 points in 37 games at the AHL level, but also has a goal and 3 points in 19 NHL games, which hasn't looked completely out of place. So he got a 2-year contract extension with the AV of league minimum deal. Not too surprised there. He's been a really solid depth pickup there for the Kings this year, and I think Lee going forward could be a really solid bomb 6 call-up option for the Kings over the next couple of years during the duration of that contract. So interesting note there, but the Kings do sign Andre Lee to a 2-year contract extension. Then we saw the New York Rangers extend their backup goaltender for the 2nd consecutive year, as Jonathan Quick, who's shown some decent showing this year, still being Shesterkin's backup, has done enough to earn himself yet another 1-year contract extension. He's earned himself a 1-year, $1.55 million extension with the New York Rangers to remain with the organization. So Quick hasn't had the best of numbers this year. Last year, he played in 27 games for New York, having a 2.62 GAA and a .911 save percentage. Looked fantastic, earned himself a 1-year contract extension. This year definitely had some more down numbers, having a 3.14 GAA and 898 save percentage in 21 games. But still, he's been a very decent guy, looking really good there for the New York Rangers. I think he still can be a solid guy who puts you up like 2.5 GAA, 910 save percentage. I think the Rangers team play had a lot to do with Quick's numbers this year. So he gets a 1-year extension, $1.55 million AAV, will continue to be Shesterkin's backup into next year. So interesting note there, but Quick's done enough to show the Rangers that he's going to remain with them over the next little while. And then just about a little while ago, we saw a massive contract extension in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. Yes, another contract extension by the Vegas Golden Knights. We've already seen them extend Shea Theodore, King Kolesar, Brett Howden, Brady McNabb. In season, they've extended another, and that's their pending UFA goaltender, Adin Hill, who was scheduled to hit unrestricted free agency this year, signed a 6-year extension with an AAV of $6.25 million. So obviously Hill has found his home in Vegas over the past couple of years. 2 years ago, in his first season in Vegas, played 27 games, putting up a 2.5 GAA and 915 save percentage, and he was still the backup, but he did lead that team to the Cup final. He was a goaltender from I think the second round up until the conference finals. So Hill was fantastic for the Vegas Golden Knights. Last year, played 35 games, having a 2.71 GAA and a 909 save percentage. A little bit worse GAA, better save percentage, still looked pretty good, and he was the starter going into the playoffs. Wasn't the starter at the end of it, but still, Hill was looking really good last year. So far this year, has played 42 games, which is a career high of games played. Has a 2.51 GAA, which is only a 0.01 worse than he had the year he won the Cup, and a 0.907 save percentage. So definitely a little bit worse save percentage, but still, he's looked like a fantastic goaltender. Hill's looked like a really good starter this year. I still think he's more of a tandem goaltender, so I'm not sure if giving him 6 years is overly ideal, but still, he's worked out great for Vegas. He helped the Golden Knights win a Stanley Cup, so he gets a 6-year extension. He's going to remain in Vegas, and it takes another solid goaltender off the UFA market for this upcoming free agent class. So some interesting signs from our past couple days with Jonathan Quick in the New York Rangers organization, Hill in the Golden Knights organization, and Lee in the Kings organization have all signed extensions to remain with their current clubs. So interesting out there. Those are all signs we're going to get to over here today. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. So we have a couple of injury updates to talk about here today. So first, with the New York Rangers, Arthur Kaliyev suffered upper body injury last Tuesday and will now be out for the rest of the year. So that's a horrible blow there for the Rangers. Kaliyev had actually fitted quite well since being claimed off waivers by the Rangers, so see him be out for the rest of the season. It's going to be a really bad blow there for the Rangers top 9, so it's a bad blow there for New York. Vancouver's Philip Chytil missed Tuesday's game last week as he is in concussion protocol and is out for a foreseeable future. That is a awful blow. Chytil has had concussion issues throughout his last number of seasons. I pray that Chytil's okay. Like, he's had so many concussion problems, so hopefully he's be able to get back into game action, maybe this year, but hopefully at least by next year, and hopefully he's not going to be out for an overly long period of time. That's a really bad injury up there for the Canucks. Dallas's Tyler Seguin, who has missed 43 games with a hip injury, is actually progressing well and may be back for the playoffs, potentially in the first few games of the first round, so that could be a really big boost there for the Stars forward group. I mean, they add Granlund and Rantanen to boost that forward group. If you add Seguin back, that's going to be a lethal forward group to play with in the playoffs. So that could be a really big boost there. But Miro Heiskanen, who has missed 16 games due to a knee injury, may wind up missing most of or potentially the entire first round for the Dallas Stars. It sounds like his injury is not going as well as Seguin's, and he may miss the first round for the Dallas Stars, which would be a big blow to that Dallas Stars defensive core because he's the main piece on that blue line. So hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time, but it does sound like he may miss the first round for Dallas. Minnesota's Marcus Foligno missed Monday's game and is out day-to-day with an injury, so hopefully he won't be out for an overly long period of time. That's a bad blow there for the Wild. Dylan Strome, who was questionable due to sickness, played on Thursday, so good to see that sickness did not stop him, and Strome did wind up playing last Tuesday, so really good stuff there for Washington. The New York Islanders, Alex Romanov and Adam Boqvist both missed Tuesday's game due to illness and are day-to-day, so it's a bad blow there for the Islanders. Hopefully Romanov and Boqvist have been solid top 4, top 6 defensemen there for the Islanders this year, are going to be back soon. While Adam Pelech returned to game action on Tuesday after missing 1 game due to a lower body injury. So interesting note there, Pelech's a really good big top 4 addition for the Islanders, so it's good to see that he got back into game action. Nick Jensen missed his 2nd straight game on Tuesday due to a lower body injury, so it's a bad blow there for Senators. Jensen is a huge piece of that Ottawa Senators blue line, so seeing him be out for any length of period of time is a really bad blow. Guhle, who's been out since January, has started to skate by himself. There's a slimmer of hope he could wind up being back before the season ends. So that could be a really good boost there, and it's good to see that he's starting to skate, but he's still out for at least the next couple of weeks at least. Dmitry Kulikov in Florida left Sunday's game with upper body injury and is out week to week, so it's a bad blow there for the Panthers. They already don't have Ekblad due to a suspension that he sustained a little while ago, so to lose Kulikov, who's a really solid third-party defenseman, is now going to really hurt that blue line there for Florida. Josh Yohe, who's already missed a game due to a lower body injury, is going to be out for the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's going to put him out until around the start of the playoffs. So hopefully he'll be able to get back into the lineup once the playoffs start. But it sounds like Manson's probably going to miss the rest of the regular season. It's a bad blow there for the Avalanche. St. Louis is Colin Parayko, who was announced to be out 6 weeks with a knee injury, may be back before the season ends. So that could be a really big boost there for the Blues, a team who's really in the heat of it for a playoff spot right now. So if they were able to get Parayko back before the end of the season, that could be huge news for St. Louis. And Dmitry Orlov should be back in the lineup on Thursday after missing 2 weeks due to an upper body injury. So interesting note there. Good to see that Orlov is going to be back after missing a whole bunch of time. So really great stuff there for Carolina. So it's an interesting injury there from the past couple of days. Good to see guys like Orlov, Guhle, Strome, and Seguin all either get back into game action or start to work their way back to getting into the game action. So good to see that for those guys. Bad news to see guys like Heiskanen, Chytil, Jensen, and Manson all be out with injuries, and hopefully they won't be out for an overly long period of time, but some interesting injuries from our past couple of days. And lastly here, going over to a couple of trade rumors. So we got a couple of trade rumors here to talk about. First, when it comes to the New York teams, there's been a couple of recent reports mentioning a couple of players who could wind up being dealt in the offseason. Remember, the offseason starts for 16 teams at the end of the regular season, so some teams are going to be beginning their offseason work in the very near future. So there's going to be a lot of reports coming out about those non-playoff teams, about what they could be doing in the offseason, and a couple of them have been centering around the Islanders and the Rangers. When it comes to the Islanders, it sounds like they're still trying to work on a Kyle Palmieri extension. They want to keep him. They didn't move him at the deadline. They did move Brock Nelson because they couldn't get a long-term extension in place, but they didn't move Palmieri because they think that they can't sign him, so we'll have to wait and see what Palmieri does. But it does sound like Lamerillo is not done potentially tinkering with this roster and will be open to moving a couple of other longtime vets in New York, and that is Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Anders Lee. Both guys are going to be, I think, entering the final year of their deal. Lee might have an extra season. Lee has 1 or 2 more years left at a $7 million cap hit, while Pageau, I think, will be entering the final year of his deal, a $5 million cap hit. Pageau has shown in the past he can be a solid second, potentially, but mostly a third-line center, and is a really solid guy. He helped Ottawa in the playoffs a number of years back. He helped the Islanders in the playoffs just a couple of years ago, so he knows what it takes to win the playoffs. He could be a really solid add. Maybe a younger team who needs some more center help could definitely target him in the offseason. So definitely keep your eye on the Islanders and Jean-Gabriel Pageau, potentially as well as Anders Lee. I think Lee only has 1 or 2 years left. Hasn't been the same as he has been in the past for the Islanders. He's not the same goal scorer he once was. So with him still having a $7 million cap hit, not sure if any teams really want to take him on, but could see if they add maybe a sweetener or retain some salary. Maybe a team or two could try and get him to sort of fit him in their top 6, maybe try and rejuvenate his goal scoring abilities. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but it does sound like Lamerillo might be open to moving both Anders Lee and Jean-Gabriel Pageau in the very near future in the offseason, so we're going to have to keep our eye on that. When it comes to New York Rangers, it does sound like the Rangers are still open to moving Chris Kreider. It sounded like this might be more of an offseason move. There was a lot of talk about, I think, in November or December when the Rangers were going through a rough patch, that they were shopping Trouba and Kreider. They did run it moving Jacob Trouba to the Anaheim Ducks, and he's been quite well since arriving there, but Kreider was not a guy who wound up getting moved. And there's been a lot of people who think that Kreider is a very likely trade candidate in the offseason for the Rangers. Now, Kreider does have a $6.5 million cap hit for either 2 or 3 more seasons, so he's still signed for quite a bit of time, but he's not too far removed from having a 50-goal campaign, and he's still a guy who can put you up 30-40 goals a season. So I think with that fact, there would be a lot of teams in the offseason interested who could need some goal-scoring help in that top 6 for other teams. Now, what the Rangers could want for Kreider, my guess would be like either a first-round pick and a decent prospect, or a roster player who does have some term on his contract who could really step into that lineup. So not exactly sure what that could look like, but it does seem that the Rangers would be open to moving Chris Kreider in the offseason if the right deal came along, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. When it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Josh Yohe of The Athletic was talking about the Penguins. He says that they made a lot of moves just before the trade deadline, made a lot of interesting moves. I graded them as one of the higher graded teams in my trade deadline recap video. I think I graded them like a B or B plus or something like that. They had a really good trade deadline, but it does seem like they're maybe not done selling off. There's been a lot of talk about potentially a guy like Rickard Rakell being potentially moved, and Josh Yohe mentions he wouldn't be surprised if they did consider moving Erik Karlsson in the offseason. Now, with the offseason, there's a lot more cap flexibility because of expiring contracts and things like that. So it might be an easier move to make offseason than would have been at the trade deadline. Karlsson, I think, has this year and either 1 or 2 more seasons left afterwards at $10 million. But he does say that the Penguins might be open to using one of the retention slots to wind up making a trade work. Now, I think a lot of teams, if there was a potentiality of the Penguins retaining like $2.5 to $3 million and getting Karlsson's cap it down to like $7.5 million, I think there would be a lot of teams interested. Sort of like Seth Jones. Like Seth Jones, 9.5. I don't think anyone was taking him on, but the Blackhawks retaining $2.5 million, bumped him down to $7 million, and he goes to Florida. So I could see like the Seth Jones deal be a blueprint for like an Erik Karlsson deal if the Penguins were able to retain enough money, or I think the Penguins could get like a first round pick and either like a really solid young piece who's NHL ready right now, or like one of the top prospects of a team. So sort of like a first round pick at night, something like that. I'm not sure if they go after like a star prospect goaltender or maybe someone else who's a really solid prospect for the other team that they're trading him to. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that, but it does sound like, according to Josh Yohe, Erik Karlsson might be a guy the Penguins move in the offseason, and teams who need some top 4 help, who might just miss out on the playoffs this year or who could be losing some big pending UFAs, I think could have some major interest in Erik Karlsson. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the Anaheim Ducks and Vancouver Canucks. Now, this is personally my speculation. I haven't heard anything about these two things, but there has a lot of talk that the goaltending market is shrinking. Now, according to a couple of recent reports I've seen, the best UFA goaltenders on the market are Devils goaltender Jake Allen, as well as Carolina Hurricanes goaltender Frederik Andersen. And those guys, I think, in my opinion at least, are 10 goaltenders at best. Andersen's injury history, even though he's had some really good stretches with Carolina, his injury history and inconsistent playoffs makes him, I think, a more tandem level goaltender than a pure starter. And Allen, I think, is a good 1A goaltender, but don't think he's a pure starter either. So for teams who really need to upgrade their goaltending and try and go after a solid level starter, I think they'll turn to trade markets. We saw a couple of really big level guys get moved in the offseason last year. Like we saw Linus Ullmark get dealt, we saw Jacob Markstrom get dealt, and a couple of other guys. I think the two names in the goaltending market this year that I personally think will headline it will be Thatcher Demko in Vancouver and John Gibson in Anaheim. Now, I personally think these two guys are bound to get moved. In Anaheim, Gibson is very unhappy, it sounds like, with his current situation. The Ducks are still not a playoff team at this point in time. Gibson, I think, has 2 years left on his deal at $6.4 million after this year. And I think, in my opinion at least, and maybe actually it has happened, Dostal has become the starter in Anaheim. So I don't think Gibson is really quite fond of being a 10 goaltender, potentially even being a 1B. And I don't think he's overly fond of being on a team that's not making the playoffs right now. So I think moving Gibson might be the best scenario. Now, I could see a similar scenario to what the Bruins got for Ullmark or what the Flames got for Markstrom to be had here, like a first round pick, a decent young NHLer who's not really a superstar level guy, and maybe something else I think could wind up being given to the Anaheim Ducks. So I think like a first round pick, maybe a mid-level prospect or a lower end roster player, and maybe something else could be given for Gibson. I think that could be a potentiality. For Demko, he's got 1 more season left after this year at a $5 million cap hit. Now, after the Canucks signed Kevin Lankinen, and they still have youngster Arthur Silas in the minors, I think they'll most likely run with a tandem of those two guys. Now, I think they could wind up maybe moving Silas to minors for 1 more season if they wanted to run with a Demko Lankinen tandem next year. But I think there's a very good chance we could see a Demko move in season. He's had so much injury troubles, I do think that he won't wind up getting moved. Now, I could see him be similar to what the Linus Ullmark contract was. Like, Ullmark has had injury histories. Now, Demko hasn't played to the level Ullmark has. So I could see maybe like a second round pick, a decent prospect, and maybe something else be had for Demko. And I think Demko could strengthen a team's goaltending position to be a solid starter. Now, I'm not sure exactly what teams could try and acquire these guys, because I think most teams actually have their starters already for next year, that like they're already signed. Like a couple of teams that come to mind will be maybe like an Edmonton Oilers. Like if they do want to try to move off of Skinner, if he doesn't have an overly great playoff run for this year for the Oilers, I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the Gibson Demko sweepstakes. Detroit, I'm not sure if they have overconfidence in Mrazek and Talbot going forward, so I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe moved off one of those guys and tried to bring in an actual starting level goaltender. Maybe Columbus, if they do decide to move off of Merzlikins, Hopkins, maybe Pittsburgh if they decide to move off of Tristan Jarry, and there's a couple of other teams who I could see maybe try and add a starter in the offseason. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. But personally, I do think that most teams trying to look for goaltending upgrades in the offseason will go through the trade market. And I do think that Demko in Vancouver and Gibson in Anaheim are the two main guys who could wind up being dealt this offseason. So definitely, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. What was your opinions on all of this? Do you think that the Ducks will move Gibson, Canucks will move Demko, and if so, where could those two guys go? Do you think the Penguins will move Erik Karlsson? Do you think they could retain salary? And if so, where could he go? And what sort of return do you think they could get? Do you think the Rangers do still move off of Chris Kreider? And if so, what sort of a team who needs top 6 help could try and acquire him? And do the Islanders continue to move off veterans by moving off of Pageau and Lee in the offseason? Definitely have to get your thoughts on all of that. Plus the signing updates and intro updates from the past couple of days down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video. If you like to subscribe below. Thank you for all of your support. We'd never be able to do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. And if you leave a comment down in the comment section below, we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. I'll link that down in the description below. And can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.